This is The Bracketologists, your home for March Madness coverage, presented by Anchor.
Eight more days until the month of March and 8 more days until the madness. How's it going, guys? I'm Brandon Matula.
And I'm Thomas Hicks.
And this is The Bracketologist, your home for March Madness coverage presented by Anchor. Well, I'm very excited to get into today's segment and really the entire show. It's our first episode. How about yourself, Tommy?
Yeah, same here. If there's anything I've been knowledgeable about in the sports world lately, it's definitely March Madness. Like, I love it so much. It's so much fun. I look forward to it more than the Super Bowl, more than the finals. Like, this is my favorite time of year, and it's an exciting one, man. It's gonna be good.
Absolutely. It's looking to be a very entertaining March Madness this year, so why not make a show about it? That was our logic going into this. I couldn't agree more. Just to get formalities out of the way, we're planning on posting this podcast twice a week on Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud, just like what we did with Hot This Week, if y'all were listeners of that. And yeah, we're just going with our same formula. 3 major platforms, so y'all can enjoy March Madness content.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'll be Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud. And then along those lines, what Brandon's saying. So once we get more into the month of March, you guys can expect some exclusive content. By that, we're talking about Selection Sunday coverage, our daily update videos, an exclusive bracket group that we have within our friend group that it's going to get very excited. It gets a little chippy in the group chat. So it's going to be really fun to show you guys what's going on, some heated moments. I'm pretty pumped to cover that and much, much more. Like we're going to be all over March Madness this year. It's going to be a whole lot of fun.
Yes, sirree. In this podcast, though, we plan on doing exactly what's in our name, showing our expertise in the big bracket to come. Tuesdays will be kind of a recap from the weekend. We'll look into AP rankings and react to them, and we'll discuss movement within the bracket projections. We're going to stick with ESPN and CBS. Those are the 2 best ones with Joe Lunardi and CBS's projections. Today we'll stick with CBS's because they have the latest projections out. And on Thursdays, we will look more towards the future, such as predicting movements in the bracket, big game predictions, because as we know, just like college football, there's a lot of big games during the weekends in college basketball. And we will discuss hot teams going into each weekend. But yeah, that's pretty much the format of our show.
Yeah, we'll be keeping this format until the actual tournament starts, and then from then on out, if we have any updates, of course, you guys will be the first group to know, and we'll let you know what the update is. Very, very clear, concise. That way, we can all stay in the loop together, and hopefully, we win you guys some money in your brackets. That's our goal.
Yeah.
To help you guys out. So, any changes to be made, you will be heard. I promise.
Absolutely. Well, now that we got that out of the way, let's jump into today's segment. Today, we'll react to the top 25 rankings. They were released Monday of this week. We'll discuss movements in the latest bracket, and we'll talk about the top 16 teams that were released by the committee. It's interesting that they're doing that this year. We'll talk about that. Yeah. We'll react to games that stood out to each of us this past weekend because there were a lot of good ones. And we'll highlight a team that Tommy and I think is really hot right now going into this week. And I'm excited to see what Tommy's pick is. It's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super pumped. I've been looking over my notes, looking over the teams nonstop, and I'm getting antsy, man. We're getting closer to March, and gosh, it's just such a fun time. So, yeah, let's not waste any time. Let's just get on into it. Let's do this.
Yes, sirree. 8 more days. Well, let's get this show on the road. Top 25 rankings, first segment of the day. Looking at it, and if y'all want to follow along with us, I just look at ESPN's rankings, not projection, but their view of the rankings, and they show the movements. It's really useful for guys like us. But looking at it, there wasn't a ton of movement. Things mostly stayed the same. And Tommy, just looking at the top 25 right now, what sticks out to you most?
Yeah, I'm loving what I'm seeing. Pretty similar to last year's. We're seeing a lot of teams that are familiar. But there's some new teams in here like Providence. And you guys know I love Kentucky. I'm not going to be biased on this show, but I love Kentucky. I see them at number 6. Like, that makes me happy. I'm a little nervous about that, but that makes me happy. Purdue is killing it. Murray State. Like, we've got some teams in here that haven't always been in here, every now and then, but the big one I'm looking at right now is an interesting placement of Providence at 11. And I think Tennessee at 17 is like, whoa, okay. Like it's a team that you're like, okay, is this really happening? Are they legit? And of course, like we ask that every year, but there's only one way to find out, and it's March Madness. Yeah. So those are just a few things that are sticking out to me. What about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I really concur with your thoughts on Providence moving back, because their loss this week came to number 10 Villanova, and they were number 8 last week. So it's interesting that they fell 3 spots. I mean, yeah. I get it. Like, if you lose a game, you're going to probably move down, especially if you lose 2. But they won both of their games. They won 1 game this week and lost 1. Mm-hmm. So I think it's interesting that they fall 3 spots. That might have to do with Texas Tech's momentum right now. They just seem unstoppable. They're great. They're a great team, but very interesting there. I like that Wisconsin moved ahead of Houston. That was something that didn't really make sense to me, because Wisconsin and Houston played in the Maui tournament. Yeah. And Wisconsin won by 1 shot. And I know it's just 1 shot, but last week Houston was above Wisconsin, and Wisconsin only had 1 more loss than them, I believe. Yeah. And Houston was coming off of 2 losses against SMU and Memphis. So very interesting that they did that before, but I'm glad they corrected that. Wisconsin had that big win over Michigan. And Tommy, I don't know if you caught it. Did you catch what happened at the end of that game?
Yes. Yeah. Our good buddy Dallin, friend of the show, we were going over that and watching it and giving our thoughts, and really interesting. Like, I don't think anyone's in the right or in the wrong, but it's just like, what was the point of that? What was the point of hitting this person? So
exactly. Yeah. And it just hurts his team, because I don't know if you saw, but he's suspended for the rest of the regular season.
Oh boy.
And that's going to hurt. That is going to hurt Michigan, because they're one of the last 4 teams in, I believe. Mm-hmm. I think, or actually they're projected to be one of the first 4 teams out. So they're on the bubble. Yeah. But like, man, that is not a good position not to have your head coach, a head coach that led you to a 2 seed last year. Yeah. So, man, like that's not a good position for them. But besides that, I think it's interesting that Alabama didn't really move. They lost to Kentucky by 9. So I thought that would push him out of the top 25. And then they barely beat Arkansas last week. So it's interesting that they kept their spot in the top 25. Yeah. And then barely beat Mississippi State this week. So Alabama's been an interesting story. They have quality wins over quality teams, but they have poor losses as well. And it'll be interesting to see where Alabama falls in the bracket. I think it's clear that they're going to make it to the tournament. It's just a matter of where they're going to be placed. But that's pretty much our thoughts on the top 25. Tommy, do you have any last thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, one last thing, and we'll probably talk more about this as we get closer, but I love St. Mary's. Like, I think that's going to be the sleeper team if this is the 25. I'm a big BYU guy. I'm actually in Provo, Utah right now, and like the basketball culture here is huge. But I'll tell you what, man, like, I don't want to get murdered for saying this, but St. Mary's, man, they are legit. Like, I think every year they come into the tournament with a chip on their shoulder, and they usually overperform at least for a few games. So St. Mary's at 23. That'll be my first sleeper pick. I guess I'll just say that if I have a sleeper pick an episode, that's my sleeper pick is St. Mary's. Very, very hot team. They're quick and they're hot too. You touch them, you'll burn your hand. You got to be careful with them. You got to come in that game wearing gloves, wearing eye goggles, whatever protection you got to wear. That is a hot team for sure. So
Yeah, absolutely. They're always a team in the Western Coast Conference that are really up there.
Yeah.
It's usually between Gonzaga. Gonzaga is always at the top. We know this. And St. Mary's, of course, and then BYU. BYU doesn't seem to be doing well in conference.
Right.
Across the board, they're 19-9, so that's not
horrible.
a terrible record. They can make they have some wiggle room, but they're going to have to really do good in that West Coast Conference tournament. So we'll see how that goes. It'll be interesting to see, too, how BYU transitions to Big 12. And it'll make the West Coast Conference a little bit weaker. So that's definitely a story to follow in years to come. But let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. We're going to talk about the seed list that was released by the committee. So I was actually not aware that they did this, where they send out the first 4 seeds, first set of seeds. So just looking at them, Gonzaga, Auburn, Arizona, and Kansas are 1 seeds. Tommy, looking at these, do you dispute any of these? Like, what's your thoughts?
I hate to do it. This is my home state. This is the greatest state in the world, in my opinion, or in the United States of America. But guys, stay far away from Texas. Stay far away from Texas. And Brandon will attest to this. Like, I always pick Texas to go real deep. Guys, last year I had them going to the finals. And we all know how that ended up, especially last year. Like, losing the first freaking round. Ridiculous. So stay away from Texas. I do not like them anymore, and I do not trust them. Saying that, they'll probably win the tournament, with my luck. But no, I'm just kidding. For real, though, stay away from Texas. But who should you go towards? And this is who I picked to win last year. They also lost early, but they're hungry. Illinois. I'm a huge Illinois fan. I think they're the hungriest and most. And I said this about St. Mary's, but Illinois is the most chip on their shoulder team in the entire tournament. Illinois has something to prove, especially after last year's early loss. So I would definitely at least take them, as far as your gut is telling you, but I would take them pretty far, Illinois. So stay away from Texas, go towards Illinois. That's what I'm thinking in my head, Brandon. What about you?
Yeah. I was more specifically asking about the 1 seeds, but I'm glad you jumped the gun on me.
Oh, my bad, man.
I am a hater of Texas, and not because of what you would think, but it's just they never perform up to what they're being promoted as.
Yeah.
Last season, they won the Big 12 championship, a very competitive conference, and the conference that had the conference champion or the national champion, Baylor Bears. So it's crazy that Texas is even being considered here. I think these rankings came out before Texas lost to Texas Tech, which was an interesting story in itself. We'll get to that in a minute. But out of these, man, I really like Purdue. I think Purdue is just kind of slowing down right now. I think the committee wants to put them at a 1 seed. They really do. Because right now they're currently ranked number 4 in the national rankings. And they're slowly climbing back from their loss to Michigan. I mean, that was just a thump in the road, And one thing that we learned last year, just because you're undefeated, just because you're having a great year, that does not mean you're the best team going into the tournament. Sometimes losing like you did against Michigan, which was 82-58. Like, even when you lose like that, like, there's definitely that definitely strengthens you in the long run, because when you learn to lose, like, you learn what you did wrong, and when you win, like, the mindset, like, it just doesn't really help as much as a loss in some ways. So I'm definitely going to be following Purdue. I expect them to move up in the 2 seed rankings, if that makes sense. If you're looking at the set list, Gonzaga at number 1 for the 1 seeds, Auburn at 2, Arizona at 3, Kansas at 4, and then for the 2 seeds, Baylor at 5, Kentucky at 6, and then Purdue at 7. I expect Baylor to move down a little bit because they had a rough week. They dropped 3 spots in the ranking. the AP ranking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, so I expect Purdue to move up in that and then possibly take a swing at the 1 seed. They might be the last 1 seed to get in. So I'm definitely going to be following Purdue. And then besides that, Texas Tech, man. That was, man, like we'll talk more specifics later, but that win in Austin, Texas was a big one. Huge.
Yeah.
Like this Texas Tech team was like projected at the beginning of the season to be a 5 to 8 seed. Like, yeah, they were projected to get in, but nowhere near of where they are right now, right as we step into the month of March. Yeah. And they don't really have tough games going out from here. I mean, they got Oklahoma State. They don't have Cade Cunningham anymore. And they're just on a hot streak right now. They beat Baylor. They beat Texas. Yeah, they're just looking really good right now. And like they're undefeated in the month of February. And they lost to Oklahoma, but across the board, they're looking really good right now. And I expect them to eventually make it to 2 seed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Texas Tech is killing it. And and that's a team that we know that has finals experience. You know, the coaching staff is very experienced, so there's no reason as to why they can't go far.
Yeah, they had that coaching change. They had their head coach head to Texas, which was a big storyline in the game, but most of the staff stayed.
Right.
Like the assistant coach took over. So you're right in that. Like they really, really are a team to be reckoned with. They have a chip on their shoulder, especially against Texas.
Yeah.
And I would not be surprised if Texas Tech took the Big 12 conference, because it's always the teams in the last week of February that thrive in conference championships. That's what it is, and that's how it tends to be. That's pretty much all my thoughts on the first set of 4 seeds being released. Tommy, do you have any thoughts as we move on?
No. Yeah, stay away from Texas, jump towards Illinois, and I agree with your words, Brandon, on Purdue. Purdue could be pretty deadly this year. I have high hopes for them, and sometimes they overperform, sometimes they underperform, but this year's looking like an overperform year.
Yep.
So keep an eye on Purdue for sure. I agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about big games this past weekend. Tommy and I both picked 2 games that really stuck out to us. I'll go ahead and we'll just flip-flop on them. I'll give you mine first, and Tommy will give you his, and we'll just go from there. First game I picked was number 14 Houston at Wichita State. This game was a slugfest. The biggest lead of the game was 6 points, and it just flip-flopped from there. ESPN has this really fun tool where you can look at the scores as the game goes, and it's a chart, and it shows, it's like a stock market chart. Like it's going up and down, and has 2 lines, and that's the score of the teams. And it zigzags. Man, I can't even count, like 10 times. Jeez. The game went to double overtime. And 2 of the best players on each team fouled out. For Houston, Fabian White, a senior that actually broke the record of career wins as a Houston Cougar, which is pretty amazing. And Wichita State, for Wichita State, I think it was Udeze that fouled out. Yes, Udeze, who had 5 points in that game, but like he's a big guy on the floor that can get you rebounds, especially against a team that plays defense and rebounds like Houston. He was valuable in this game, and it definitely hurt him in the long run since they didn't have very much size towards the end of the game. And the game ended on a clutch dunk. And before that, a guy that was just on fire was Porter Jr. Craig Porter Jr. had 17 points. He had a clutch 3-pointer to tie it at 9 seconds in double overtime. And then Houston ran down the court. Shed, point guard for the Cougars, passed it down court and got it to Jawan Roberts. And he scored his only points of the game. And he won the game for the Cougars. And it was just it was a slugfest. If you like defense, like this was your game. And you might look at this and you see that the Cougars are ranked 14 and they were possibly going to lose against a 13-11 Wichita State game. Do not let that fool you. Wichita State at home is a very difficult team to beat. Like that stadium just gets so loud.
Yeah.
And nobody is safe when they play there. And man, for Wichita State, like, I know it doesn't look good for them to get an at-large bid in the tournament, but man, oh man, you better watch out for them in the tournament. Like, I would hate, like, if I was a team heading into the American tournament, I would not like to see Wichita State's name on my side of the bracket or in my portion of the bracket.
Yeah.
It would be a nightmare. So that's my first game. Tommy, would you like to share your thoughts on this game if you have any?
Yeah, great game. Really fun and exciting game to watch. I love back and forth, and I love just those tight games. I really have no complaints as far as a fan of March Madness goes. I think that if this is what March Madness is going to be looking like, competitive games, once again, we're in for a treat. You know, this year's been really promising culturally, just with music, movies, games, TV shows, just entertainment wise. This year, 2022 has already been pretty promising. And we're in mid-February, so I can only imagine that March Madness follows and everything else follows. But yeah, I thought it was a very exciting game. You want me to go ahead and get into my game?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm going. So I had Texas Tech and versus Texas, which we kind of touched upon quite a bit earlier today. And I'm sitting up here. I just sat up in my chair. You guys know that means it's about to go down when I sit up. Because listen to this. Like, when we look at the stats, right? And stats aren't everything. They're a good indicator on what we can expect, but they're not everything. And then, we've come to find that, especially in March Madness. But Texas Tech goes 19 for 52 in their field goals. Okay, not incredible, but not horrible. Texas 17 for 60. Okay, but what's the field goal percentage between the two? Well, it's a 36% field goal percentage for Tech and a 28 for Texas. And that's just not a pretty sight, especially for Texas. So unless if Texas completely turns something around, guys, I think you have Texas going out early again. Although they have that chip on their shoulder and they're hungry, they're not really proving themselves to be doing anything different to get that chip off of their shoulder. So I don't like that. Tech out rebound Texas. The free throw percentage did go to Texas, but what's that? What's a king to a god? What's a god to a non-believer? So, 69% versus 76%. No, it doesn't really matter. Assists went to Texas, but just by 2. Texas had steals just by 1, and they had more blocks. And Tech did have more turnovers. So that is something that could be of interest if you are a fan of Texas. That could be a little bit promising. It's not a huge margin to where we can freak out, but it's exciting. But yeah, guys, like, Tech is legit. That's something that has been a pattern tonight on the show. But I think it's almost safe to say we can outrule Texas right now.
Yes.
And I don't want this to come back and bite me in the bottom and have them win the freaking tournament. But guys, I mean, it's clear as day. We saw what happened last year, and I think we have ourselves another situation like that. They are hungry, so if they do go far, like, I can at least say that they were hungry. So I'm glad that they proved me wrong. But they're underperforming, and they just seem to be getting worse and worse. So lean on Tech, but more so, don't even go near Texas this March Madness. And that's my first game. Brandon, any thoughts on that? And after that, if you want to go into your third one, I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun storyline with this game. I don't know if you caught it, Tommy, but did you notice that there were a lot of Texas Tech fans at this Texas game? Because this was played in Austin.
I did. That was a pretty red crowd for an orange team.
Yeah. So, fun story. So the season ticket holders for the Longhorns, they accidentally leaked the link for tickets.
Huh.
So guess who got a hold of it? Texas Tech fans.
That's funny.
So they just bar baited it. And
Yeah.
I heard that a lot of, like, board members or just alumni who have that kind of money bought dozens and dozens of tickets and just gave it to Texas Tech fans.
Wow.
And
that's awesome.
They just went from there, and that's why that was such a 50-50 game, it seemed like. It was almost like a bowl game for college football. In college basketball fashion. It was a neutral-sided game, basically. Like, it was just... Like, I couldn't believe how much red I saw at that game. And that definitely could have been a factor, but, man, we see good teams win on the road out all the time. And, I mean, at the end of the day, Tech was not playing on their home court, and they still took a victory. So, great analysis, by the way. Loved hearing the stats. I did not know Texas's shooting was that atrocious.
It wasn't great.
So, my second game was between Providence and Butler. And I was really surprised that this game was close as it was, because Butler is not having a great year. They're not even close being projected to be in the tournament. But I think on Providence's end, I think it really showed resilience on their end, because this was another overtime matchup, just like the Houston game. It was at Butler. And man, like, one thing that's certain about college basketball is that really good teams are going to lose to bad teams sometimes. It's inevitable. It happens.
Yes.
Like, we saw it happen to Auburn this past weekend against Florida. Nothing against Florida. They're one of the last 4 teams in. Nothing wrong with that at all. But at the end of the day, Florida is nothing special compared to what Auburn's talent is this year. But the fact of the matter is, there's always going to be a lesser team that's going to beat a bigger team. And it was almost Butler's chance to do this. Butler was up for, like, I think their biggest lead, looking at the stats, they were up by 19. Butler was up by 19 in the second half. 3 minutes in. So it really looked like Butler was going to run away with this one. But you got to give it to Providence's center, Nate Watson, 22 points, 10 of 15 shooting. Didn't do too well with free throws, 2 of 5. But, I mean, he was their guy. He played 40 minutes. Or no, he did not. He played 35 minutes. But, I mean, that's a lot of minutes for a center, because what we do know about centers is that they're big and it's hard for them to move sometimes. So, kudos to Providence. I like that you highlighted them at the beginning, because it just kind of made my job easier to analyze them, because they're a resilient team. Butler is not a team to be messed with. Yes, they're 13 and 15, but you got to treat every opponent with respect going into March. And the Big East is not a conference to be messed with. Lots of great teams in there. UConn is looking good. Creighton's looking good. Villanova's looking great. And then Providence, who's sitting at the top of the conference at 12-2, is looking great themselves. So I'm excited to see their tournament play out. Conference tournaments are going to be really interesting this year. Like, they're not technically a part of March Madness, but I'm definitely going to be watching, and I'm definitely going to be watching Providence duke it out with whoever.
Yeah. Really fun games. Like Providence, like you were saying, could they be the sleeper team of the tournament? It's promising. And Butler, great team as well. I don't want to sleep too much on Butler. Hey, not the best year, but nothing. No reason to throw in the towel. On the entire program. But speaking of throwing in the towel, that leads me to my second and final game here. And that will be Illinois versus Michigan State, which was this Saturday. Illinois winning by a slim 5 points against the number 12 Illinois against number 19 Michigan State. It's funny because it's the 2 teams I had in the finals last year. However, I think Illinois, I go completely opposite from Texas. There's a lot of connections here, but I go opposite from Texas. I say lean on Illinois. I say Illinois is hungry. I say that they want this. And they're beating these teams that have big programs to back their name up. Michigan State, they're playing Ohio State on Thursday, and then they're playing Michigan Sunday the 27th. So they've got some big games coming up. They beat Wisconsin. That's awesome. They beat Indiana. The Indiana's not ranked, but still pretty impressive. They lost to Purdue by quite a bit. Okay, that's a little alarming. But then they came back and beat Northwestern by almost double digits. And then Rutgers beat them, which was alarming as well. But we have to remember that one of their key players was injured. So, knowing everything that we know, Illinois, I think it's safe to say that this could be the year. This could be the comeback season. Really enjoying what I'm seeing from Illinois. I loved watching the game. They played once again, they played Michigan State. And it's not all about stats, but Illinois definitely it was close. Michigan State had a better field goal percentage. They made the same amount of threes, but took less shots. They had just a little bit their free throw percentage was just a little bit smaller. So, Michigan State's not a team where you can be like, oh yeah, Illinois should have beaten them, because it should have been. I mean, should they have beaten them? Yes, but not. It shouldn't have been clear as day, which I don't think it was. But it's exciting, man. Exciting stuff coming from Illinois. I'm happy with the team. I think they're ready. I think they're ready and they're hungry. Really big fan of Kofi Cockburn. That dude is just a beast. The center, 7-foot center, 285 pounds, number 21 on Illinois. And then Trent Frazier too. I think he's a very underrated player. So a lot of cool things to look forward to with Illinois. Fun game this Saturday. Keep an eye out for that. And Brandon, I'll pass the mic to you.
Yeah. I really like that you pointed out Kofi Cockburn. I was really surprised to not see him head into the draft. I think the storyline there was that he felt that he let his team down. Yeah. He felt like Illinois was supposed to get a lot further than they did. I believe they lost to Loyola Chicago, and I think they were in the Midwestern region last year, and then Houston ended up winning that regional, the 2 seed. And Illinois really should have been in that Elite Eight game against Houston, because that would have been more entertaining, and Illinois probably could have come out on top. They were really looking good. And Kofi Cockburn was definitely a guy that was the catalyst of that. He's averaging a double-double this year with 21 points per game. Can't wait to see this guy in the month of March. It's going to be a great, great month of March, so long as this guy's in it as well. So I'm excited to watch him. Thank you for your analysis, Tommy. We're going to go ahead and move on to our final segment, the team of the weekend. Now, we say weekend because the best team / broadcastable, if that's a word, the broadcastable games are played against the big name schools. So most of the time you get ranked matchups. And so that's why we're saying team of the weekend. And Tommy, you go ahead and go first. I want to hear yours.
Yeah, so my team of the weekend is, we're going back to who I said could be the dark horse here. It's St. Mary's. Now, this is interesting. They're playing San Diego. San Diego's 14-13, right? Should be an easy dub. But they did lose to sorry, I lost my place on the app. Santa Clara. They lost to Santa Clara by 5 points. That's the technology. Always losing your place. So sorry about that. But yeah, Santa Clara gets 5 points up on them, wins 77-72 on a ranked 22 St. Mary's team. Now that's interesting. Okay, well, can we come back and beat San Diego? Because if they can, who are they playing the week after? It's Gonzaga. And I think they need that fire to beat Gonzaga. And here's why I say that. And I'm going somewhere with this. Now, they lost to Santa Clara. And this was Tuesday, February 8th. Thursday on the 10th of February, they win against San Diego. They have that fire. Now they go in with St. Mary's. They go in and play Gonzaga. That's Saturday the 12th. They lose pretty hefty, almost by 20 points. They lose by 14. 16. So dang, that's kind of alarming, right? We that's not what we want from a dark horse team. And I know Gonzaga is a powerhouse, but we want the margin to be a little bit closer than that. Okay, well then they go on to beat San Francisco, BYU, and so they're going back on that win streak. So I think if they beat San Diego, that's a 3-game win streak. They're on fire. They've still got that chip on their shoulder, and they're ticked off Gonzaga won.
Yep.
So I think, and if they beat Gonzaga, I think they earn a lot more respect.
Yeah.
In the March Madness.
And definitely, definitely something to note in that matchup. This game is going to be at St. Mary's. So I can imagine, like, I don't know how big their arena is, but however big it is, I know it's going to be loud because this game can skyrocket their seed. Because regardless, I think it's safe to say that they're going to make it so long as they can beat San Diego on the road. That might be a little tough on the road because, road games are tough.
Road games are always tough. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, I really like the St. Mary's team. Yeah, I would definitely say they're a good candidate. They've definitely been consistent, scoring 69 in both of their past games.
Yeah.
And I really like that pick. I think they're a team that's getting hot right at the right time. And I really like your analysis there. Like, it's like, yeah, they lost to Santa Clara. Yeah, they lost to Gonzaga. But, like, that's not important. They're winning other games, and they're winning them pretty big.
Yes.
So
exactly.
it's definitely something to realize there. I can't wait to watch that game. We'll definitely cover that on our next segment between Gonzaga and St. Mary's. But let's get into my pick, and we'll go ahead and close this thing out. It's an easy one. We've been preaching it this entire show. It's Texas Tech for me. And they came into the weekend as a projected 3 seed, and now I imagine that they're a lot higher. Like, they have to be. They have to be at least the number 1 in the 3 seed. And they're currently number 2 behind Villanova. But gosh, a win like that at Texas and the way they've been playing, beating Baylor as well, that cannot go unrecognized. It just really cannot. So I'm excited to see where Texas Tech goes from here. They're getting hot at the right time. I will say that. And they don't really have tough opponents going out. 2 of their last 4 games are home. So that helps them a lot. One of them is a rematch against Oklahoma. So I imagine tensions are going to be high in that game. But yeah, Texas Tech is my team. So definitely be looking for them. And like, this is off the record advice. Definitely lock them in as a pick to go far in this year's tournament. Maybe the Elite 8. I think that's a fair assessment, especially how they're performing as of now. That about wraps it up for us at the Bracketologist. Tommy, any final thoughts?
No, yeah. As far as final thoughts go, I'm just excited to get the ball rolling. No pun intended. Like, it's going to be a great season. And this is just, the prelude is great. So I can only imagine what the meat of the sandwich is going to be. So very excited.
Absolutely. In our next segment, we'll cover the upcoming games of this upcoming weekend, and we'll dive more into more predictions about bracket movements, and I'm excited to get into that. I'm excited to get to the meat of the show, which is bracketology. We're bracketologists here, y'all. Mad bracketologists. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Peace.
See you guys.
This has been the Bracketologist, presented by Anchor. We'll see you guys next time.